It's famously hard to get struck by lightning, but Roy Sullivan is a man who, allegedly, got it down to a science. 7 goddamn times. Let's take a look at the man who claims to have been licked by Odin for each day of the week and see what's really going on. Roy Sullivan was born in 1912 in a small Virginia town nestled in the Shenandoah Valley, where Sullivan once claimed to have shot 30 rabbits in one day, which is a super weird brag and also seems a tad excessive. Isn't there a point after you've killed, 5, 6, 10 rabbits that you stop and think to yourself, hey, I think I'm good for the day? Roy never had that thought. 30 rabbits had to go down that morning, and that was that. Or did they? This is an important time to stop and say that this, like everything else we're about to hear, was just a claim by Roy, unverifiable and dubiously grandiose. It's entirely possible that Roy's penchant for boastful storytelling began at a young age, so we need to keep that in mind. As Roy grew older, his love for nature grew as well. He made it official by joining the park services as part of the fire patrol, where he would become a real human lightning rod. Maybe. Roy was pretty fresh in the department when he took his first blast in 1942. Stationed at a new fire tower that hadn't had any actual lightning rods installed yet, he watched as a massive storm rolled in, and after seeing lightning strike the tower 6 or 7 times, Roy made a break for it. Sure enough, Roy only made it a few feet before Zeus targeted him in that great real-time strategy game in the sky and hit his lightning hotkey. In what will become a running theme here, absolutely nobody was around to see what happened next. Roy claimed to have had a half-inch stripe burned down his right leg and that his big toe was blown clean off. Let's just stop right there. Toes shouldn't do that, but it's allegedly what happened. And you know what? I'm inclined to believe this one. After looking into it as deeply as possible and stacking it up against the ones that follow, I can confidently say that I'd give this story a 51% chance of being true. Those odds, of course, are about to go way down. It was almost 30 years later, in 1969, that Roy claimed to have been struck again. His tale went that he was driving his parked truck through the forest when another storm hit. He said the lightning danced from tree to tree, working closer toward him as he drove through the mid-90s blockbuster scene that he was living, before Thor was done screwing around and sent a shot straight through the windshield, knocking him unconscious. When Roy came to, he had nearly driven his car off a cliff and was missing his eyebrows and eyelashes. And that's pretty much all the damage he took. What he's selling us on is that lightning not only singled him out, but once it had, he was hit by the softest bolt of all time, and it spared him with a drunken frat boy prank for an injury. I personally find it more likely that old Roy was hot dogging in his work truck, because that's a time-honored, God-given American right, and he got a little sideways and crashed into a tree. I believe Roy then did some quick thinking and grabbed a plain Bic razor. Either way, Roy claims that Thor checked in on him again just 1 year later. And this next strike happened, you guessed it, while Roy was alone. He said he was hanging out doing a little bit of gardening on a clear sunny day when this one hit. He claims he was struck in the shoulder, lifted off his feet, and burned only slightly. Checking back in on our odds, I'm going to put my belief in this strike at a generous 1%, and I'm going to go with a 99% chance that he burnt himself on the stove. Roy was struck once again a few years later, and this time it allegedly set his damn hair ablaze. With Roy putting on the best Ghost Rider cosplay in history, he frantically tried to subdue the flames that were dancing on his head by sticking it in the sink. Understandably, Roy was starting to gain some minor fame from all this. After the 4th strike, he was interviewed by the Washington Post, to whom he claimed he was actually struck once as a child, too. He insisted that he'd been in the fields cutting wheat when a bolt shot through his scythe and set the field on fire. I think it's fair to conjecture at this point that Roy may have loved him some attention. The 4th strike also saw the Guinness Book of World Records come calling. They dubbed Roy the only living man to be struck by lightning 4 times. Roy was famous. He could have called it right there. But this was the goddamn Spark Ranger. Yeah, an incredible, real nickname given to Roy around this time. Roy was thus hit for the 5th time in 1973. Roy was once again driving his truck through a storm, and after he believed he was out of harm's way, he stopped the truck for a quick little peek around. He described what happened next, saying, "I actually saw the lightning shoot out of the cloud this time, and it was coming straight for me." According to Roy, who was, and I hope you're sitting down, alone again, his hair was set aflame and his boot popped off. The ink had hardly dried on Roy's Guinness entry before they needed to update the strike count. The 6th time Roy straight up lied to everybody, was struck by lightning, was a few years later. I'm going to need you to suspend your disbelief for just a second here and bear with me. Roy Sullivan was once again alone, with no witnesses nearby, when he was struck. But this time, Roy seems to have really phoned it in. There's no documentation of any sort of notable bodily harm, no fantastical story. Roy was simply walking along a trail on duty when he was hit. The seventh and final strike was a doozy. Roy had finally retired, so he decided to move to a place where it doesn't storm, and he would stay inside and watch TV all day, and would never ever go outside again under any I'm joking, he went right back down to the park to throw the double birds at fate. He was fishing in a stream, all alone, no witnesses, you know the drill, when this one hit. His head was struck, his body was burned, and some holes were ripped in his shirt and pants. And once again, this either happened, and we are taking his word for it, or Roy Hulk Hogan'd his shirt and held a lighter to his nipples for a little bit. But Roy knew that if his final comeback song was going to top the charts, he'd need a little more spice. So, he claimed to have pulled himself back to the truck, where he was met by a hungry black bear, who was interested in the fish he had caught. Despite being freshly incinerated, Roy asserted that he was able to fight the bear off and make his way back to the car with his life and fish fully intact. The reality is that we'll never truly know the whole story here. It's been almost unanimously accepted in print and legend, in spite of a lack of proof. And the even more incredible idea that someone was struck by lightning 7 times and somehow didn't earn the record for world's deadest man.